one. We are going to start with the tools and platforms, special interest groups. And I would like to invite Antoine Cordelois and Monica Ross to present the SIG. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Carla. Will you share your screen or?
You can do it.
Okay, just give me a minute. Oh, okay, can you see my screen?
Yep.
Okay. So, as you may know, the idea for this event came from the Tools and Platforms Special Interest Group. But as I see so many people here, both familiar faces and new ones, I can't help but start by giving a special thanks to the Opera organizing team who have done so much to make it happen. So first of all, and on behalf of the SIG, I would like to thank you, Elena, Carla, Magdalena, and Lorena for all your help and efficiency in putting this together, because I guess we couldn't have done it without you. So thank you. And special thanks as well to the Opera Innovation Lab, as well as the AI task force who joined the effort. So as the tools and platforms SIG, it was difficult not to dedicate one of our sessions to this topic, given the recent increased use of LLMs and AI. And as we wanted to test this new 2-hour format, it seemed like the perfect opportunity to discuss what is being done with these technologies in the scholarly communication field, especially in SSH. So before turning the floor over to our speakers, I would like to briefly introduce what the SIG is, what our mission is, and give you a brief history of our group. So when I joined the SIG in 2022, we were 10, 12 people in the SIG. We are now a strong troop of 15 members. It's a mix of very diverse profiles, and rather than during the discussion, it provides us with many insight and perspectives on the things we discuss, and it is actually very helpful. So our general mission is to keep in touch with the pulse of things in the field of open scholarly communications, tools, and services. So we look at what people do, what are the trends, what are the needs emerging for the community, and based on this kind of understanding, we try to provide guidance and best practices for the open access community. So you can see there is a short list of the institution and country represented in the SIG. So I will try to make the long story short. Once upon a time in 2017, one of the first working groups of Opera was a tools and R&D working group. It became in 2019 the SIG tools and platforms, and along the way, following the general mission I mentioned a minute ago, we produced 2 white papers, one in 2018 and one in 2021. And we tried to provide insights and knowledge. And then we started during our monthly SIG meetings. It was 1 hour every month. We started to host and organize presentations of what people do, whether it was our members or people from outside the SIG, and working session on one particular topic. And at some point in 2023, we realized it was an excellent use case to try to come up with a schema, a data schema to describe what is a tool or platform for used in the framework of open scholarly communication. We did it and we made this schema. So we asked ourselves, what are the best metrics? What are the best category? What should be useful to decide on what tool to use as opposed to another one? And since we had this schema, we decided to bootstrap it. And we found a maintained database, open source database such as Comcat, and we try to reshape it into the schema we came up with, and we made a small data set. The initial plan was to provide the community with a tool where everyone could update, maintain, and curate the database, but we couldn't pull it off on a 1 hour a month slot. So we decided to publish this in 2024 as a spreadsheet on the Opera website, tools, and platform. And this is it for the introduction. I think I should leave the floor to Carla now, or to the question if we have any.
Thank you, Antoine. Yes, actually, I have a first question, that is, what was the motivation for the tools and platforms SIG to organize this workshop on AI?
Well, it's twofold. For starters, as I said, it's the elephant in the room. So we had to take care of this kind of topics. But we also had a practical reason, which is that in 2024, we tried to change the system of the SIG meetings to have one speaker for each session. But it turns out that it's a lot of work to prepare and plan all the presentations. So we decided to give a try to one every 2 months presentation, and those other months we dedicated to prepare and invite people and communicate. And today is the first the first of its kind. So yes, welcome to everyone again, and I'm really glad to see you here, so many. So first time.
That's a great start. And I have a second question, is that how can researchers and infrastructure developers contribute to shape the direction of AI-driven scholarly communication tools?
What, Monica?
Yeah, maybe I can try. Do you hear me?
Yes, perfect.
Yes, perfect. Well, it's obviously a very difficult and broad question, and there is no obvious answer to it. But one of the reasons for arranging this seminar is to present some examples of what the community is doing on the topics, and also try to identify maybe some particular topics which are pressing amongst the community members. Also, maybe some of the topics can be raised and discussed further in operas and in the community. And in the next presentations, the speakers will give some insight into their topics and things they are working on. So I hope they will give inspirations in your all effort and in shaping the future digital landscape. And I guess that's the best answer I can give.
Thank you, Monica. Well, so this was our first presentation, this introduction of the SIG tools and platforms. So the SIG, the Special Interest Group, is one of many others that exist in operas, and it's a place for the operas community to talk about different topics, and to really understand what are the needs of the open scholarly communication community in the SSH. If you want to know a little bit more, do not hesitate to go to Opera's website to learn more about the different groups, and also to contact any of us at any moment. So I'll try to ask the whole group, to the audience, another question. Let's see if it's going to work in my quiz. I hope so. Oh, we already have all the answers here. You reply to everything. So let's see. The second question is, how frequently do you use AI tools in your scholarly communication work? So we can see it here. And the winner is occasionally. And I use it for specific tasks. Then we have regularly and rarely, in a tie, and never, and 6%. Okay, so now I think we can see some more specific examples of AI use. And for that, I would like to invite the first presenters, the second presenter, sorry. Are they here already? Sai and Julian?
Yep, we're here.
Yes.
So great. So you can share your screen for your presentation. And yes, I see it's working already. So Sai Holsinger, that's the CTO from Operas, and Julian Omo, the CTO from Foxcub. And they're going to present emerging AI solutions for SSH and the vision behind two new projects, Lumen and Graphia. So the floor is yours.
Okay. Well, first of all, thank you very much for the invitation and the opportunity. I think it's quite important, actually. It's actually the right timing or interesting timing that this workshop has happened, because we do have these two new projects that have just started, and each of them with its own AI components within inside of it. So we definitely would have already had on our list of things to do, which is to try to communicate with the rest of the community about what we're doing with inside of the projects and with AI. So it's funny how this stuff works out sometimes. So basically, I'll introduce the two projects from a very high level, but then of course I'll pass over to Julian, who is serving as the technical coordinator between the two projects. So I'll give you a brief introduction and then pass over to Julian, who will then dig into probably the more interesting aspects that you guys are all looking to hear. And Julian, do you have any introductory words?
No, thank you, Sai. It's perfect.
Okay. All right, then we can go to the overview then. So basically, Lumen and Graphia, they are quite complementary between each other, and I think mostly because it's around discoverability, interoperability, and collaboration between different disciplines. So Lumen is basically more specifically looking at Go triple and Go triple development. Basically, over this last year, we've kind of been running, since the triple project finished, in a kind of operation and maintenance mode, where Lumen gives us the opportunity now to kind of go back to some of the developments that we wanted to put into practice, as well as expand it out. So for sure, there's a big development of Go Triple as a platform, but it's also interacting with other scientific disciplines to see if how the data model behind Go Triple could be beneficial for other communities. So we have three communities inside: mathematics, earth systems, and molecular dynamics. And a possible outcome of this would be maybe a white label solution for Go Triple that could be reused for other purposes. And then deploy and expand its interoperability with other platforms. And then, of course, look at different governance models, because it is underneath the EOSC funding platform. So how can we basically better serve the wider EOSC community? And one component of that is something that they called an innovation center, so supporting innovations across the landscape. So that would be another interesting activity with inside of it. And then you have Graphia, which I'm personally serving as the project coordinator. This is more looking at building out a knowledge graph for social sciences and humanities. And of course, there was a huge, in the call text, there was a huge artificial intelligence component to this. So we'll have a number of different AI modules that will be developed as part of the knowledge graph, as well as integrating with other existing knowledge graphs that already exist. So we identified at least 7 of these knowledge graphs that we will start for integration. Then we have, I'm going to remember, 8 specific use cases that we've brought into the project to do tangible work with the knowledge graph. as well as 6 pilots that will be testing the AI components and the AI modules that we will have to see if basically they are work in practice, how they're supposed to work. So both of these projects are 3 years. GoTriple will be basically one of the data providers for the knowledge graph, and then see how basically also the knowledge graph functionalities can help improve GoTriple itself. So together, that's what the bottom part says. They drive the AI innovation while ensuring that it remains open, transparent, and interoperable. That also means basically making the training data available and things like that. So, but I'll stop there, and I'm happy to pass over to Julian, who could walk you down through the individual technical details.
So thank you, Sai. Now I propose to do a specific focus on the AI part of these 2 projects. So as you know, artificial intelligence is everywhere. It's transforming industries, automating workflows, and changing the way we access and generate knowledge. So naturally, it seems like AI should be a game changer for research, and especially for social sciences and humanities. Well, in fact, it's the reality is a little bit different. While AI has a huge potential, the reality is that most mainstreams AI models like ChatGPT, Gemini, and the other are simply not designed for SSH. They are trained on broad with general datasets, which means they lack the depth, the precision, and the contextual understanding that SSH research requires. This leads a lot of issues, biased outputs, hallucination, a lack of transparency, etc. And let's be honest, researchers need to know where the information comes from. We cannot just take AI-generated content at face value. So the real question is, how do we move beyond generic AI tools and develop AI that actually works for SSH? That's where Lumen and Graphia come in. These 2 initiatives are designed to bridge this gap and create AI-ready infrastructures that researchers can actually trust and use. So let's take a look at what these projects are all about from an AI point of view. So now that we have seen why general AI struggle with SSH research, let's talk about how Lumen and Graphia approach this challenge in a different way. These are 2 interconnected initiatives that tackle AI limitation from different angles. On the left, we have Lumen. Its role is to create a strong, well-structured, and interdisciplinary data governance framework. Lumen ensures that AI is trained on high-quality, well-structured dataset, making it more reliable and adaptable for research. On the right, we have Graphia, which takes structured data and builds on it. Graphia develops AI-powered knowledge graph, AI-powered knowledge graphs that enhance discovery, contextualization, computation, and validation. Instead of treating information as isolated text, Graphia connects entities, relationships, citation, making research more accessible and more useful. And what makes these 2 initiatives truly complementary is that Lumen ensures that its data is trustworthy, fair, interoperable, while Graphia uses AI to organize, to enrich data, and to offer new way to consume and analyze it. So now let's go deeper, especially we will start with Lumen. All right, so we all know that AI models are only as good as the data they are trained on. So if the data is messy, inconsistent, or biased, then the AI will be too. So this is a huge problem, especially in research, where we need accuracy, traceability, and where the context matters. This is where Lumen comes in. It's not just about storing data, it's about making sure that data is structured, well-governed, and ready to be used in a meaningful way. It does this through a federated data mesh approach, ensuring that data from different disciplines and infrastructure can actually be used together. It also follows the FAIR principles, meaning the data is findable, accessible, interoperable, and reusable. Why is this important? because it ensures that when AI interact with research data, it's not just pulling random pieces of information from unverified sources. Instead, it's working with high quality, curated datasets that researchers can trust. This is the foundation for AI that actually support research rather than distorting it. Now, let's take a look of the first AI-powered of one of the AI-powered services that Lumen aims to develop during this project. And I will share with you some details about the interdisciplinary chatbot designed to support research workflows. So unlike general AI chatbot, this one will not rely on broad and unverified internet sources. Instead, it will work with structured, curated research data from multiple disciplines. By leveraging the Lumen data mesh, it will access high-quality, interoperable dataset, ensuring that responses are accurate and contextualized. The goal is to create a tool with 3 key strengths. The first of them is a cross-domain knowledge integration, meaning that responses are based on verified data from the involved communities, which are here in Lumen, the SSH, mathematics, Earth system, and the community molecular dynamics. Secondly, the strength is an AI transparency and explainability, so that researchers can trace the origin and reliability of the information provided. And the third strength is enhancing scholarly workflows by helping researchers navigate, explore, discovering, and synthesize complex datasets more efficiently. Why it's important? Because it will serve as an early demonstration of how AI can improve research workflows while maintaining strong data governance. If successful, this chatbot could be a first step toward broader AI-powered services within Lumen, supporting discovery and, of course, open scholarly communication. So now let's move from Lumen, which focuses on structuring and governing research data, to Graphia, which takes structured data and makes it more useful for AI-driven discovery. SSH research produces vast amount of complex heterogeneous data, text, citations, qualitative studies, archival materials. So traditional databases and search engines struggle with this type of content because they lack contextual understanding. This makes research discovery inefficient and limits how scholars can connect ideas across disciplines. Graphia is being developed to address this challenge by leveraging AI and graph-based technologies to structure, connect, and enrich scholarly knowledge. How it does that? First, through the SSH knowledge graph, which interconnects research outputs and improves interoperability. Then, by using AI-powered enrichment, which applies machine learning to enhance metadata, relationships, classification, and so on. And finally, with a hybrid graph architecture, combining RDF and label property graph, ensuring that different types of data can be integrated in a scalable way. But what makes Graphia different from other AI-driven tools? In fact, unlike black box AI models, Graphia doesn't replace human expertise. It enhances knowledge representation in a transparent and structured way. And by linking fragmented research outputs, it enables cross-disciplinary insight that would otherwise be difficult to uncover. This is just the foundation, but after that, Graphia will integrate more AI-powered services to improve this discovery, this citation analysis, and the global knowledge structuring. For example, here you can see some of them. In Graphia, we integrate several AI-driven tools designed to improve the research discovery, the citation analysis, and the metadata enrichment. One of the key components is the SSH citation index, which uses AI to automate citation extraction and linking. This helps researchers track academic influence, detect citation patterns, and uncover hidden connection between works. Then we have the LLM for SSH, which is a domain-specific language model fine-tuned for SSH, supporting tasks like classification, entity recognition, or scholarly summarization. Graphia also include AI-assisted metadata enrichment, which automatically identifies key concepts, extract relationships, and enhance metadata for better classification and analysis. Finally, the knowledge graph augmentation allows AI to detect new entity relationships, helping to connect fragmented research topics across the disciplines. Why does this matter? Because traditional search tools in SSH could be limited. They often miss implicit connection and fail to grasp the deeper meaning behind research outputs. AI-driven approaches like this help researchers structure knowledge, making it easier to reuse, collaborate, and bridge gaps across the disciplines. And ultimately, this aligns with open science by making research outputs more accessible, searchable, and reusable. So now to conclude, we have seen what Lumen and Graphia are designed to, but it's important to remember that these projects are just getting started. The next few years will be about laying the foundation, experimenting, and adapting to the evolving needs of the research community. For Lumen, the immediate priorities are to establish a scalable and federated data infrastructure. We have to refine our governance models for better interoperability and fair compliance, and most importantly, to engage research communities in the co-development of these tools. Because if the researchers don't use them, they won't be impactful. Graphia, on the other hand, will be focused on building the initial SSH knowledge graph, testing how AI can enrich research data, and prototyping LLM-based services to explore metadata extraction, citation analysis, search enhancement. And a major priority will be to ensure that this infrastructure, this graph, remains open, explainable, and researcher-driven. But of course, there are still many open questions. How can AI integrated into scholarly communication? How can AI be integrated into scholarly communication without compromising research quality? What governance model will be the most effective for interdisciplinary AI infrastructures? And most importantly, how can we ensure that researchers are actively shaping AI tools rather than just adapting to them? At this stage, we are still a lot to explore, a lot to refine, but what is clear is that AI for research is not just about automation. It's about creating knowledge infrastructures that researchers can trust, use, and contribute to. This is just the beginning of a longer journey, and the coming year will be crucial in shaping how this AI will support open and transparent scholarly communication. And that's all. Thank you. So please feel free to ask your question.
Thank you, Julian. Thank you, Sai. Do we have any questions from the audience? There's a comment. So for me, their interest for the description of the tools comes after some interesting uses are shown. I don't know if you'd like to elaborate on that.
Please, Carla, could you repeat the question, please?
It's more like a comment, not as a question, but for me, the interest for the description of the tools comes after some interesting uses are shown. But the person who made the comment also, if you want to elaborate.
Okay. You are mentioning uses. Of course, a common point between the two projects is the use cases. In the two projects, in the two initiatives, we are use case. We used a use case driven approach. Our first common exercise with all the team, with all the work package of the project, are to identify the relevant use cases we need to address through the Lumen framework on through the SSH knowledge graph. This is for us something which will drive us during the 3 years. So of course, we are currently, the presentation is focused on AI and what we could do from an AI point of view through this project. But of course, first of all, we have to address some the specific needs of the research community. It's obvious for the teams.
Yeah, I mean, just to expand as well, that at least for Graphia speaking, basically they'd had to have a number of different S3s as part of the consortium. So we brought the research infrastructures together within the project and then to basically also run those use cases. So they're basically real world applications. But just to complement that, we also have what they call a co-design activity. We're running a number of interviews and co-design workshops that will basically be able to bring in additional specific user needs into the development phases as well. So it's been run by our colleagues at Abertay University.
And there are other 2 questions in the chat. One from Johan. For the semantics, do you use a controlled vocabulary in Graphia?
Yeah, in the 2 projects, we have specific work packages dedicated to this question, how we can build interoperable things through controlled vocabularies, through specific ontologies. It's a huge task to be sure that we are in the right direction. That's why a lot of teams are working on it. So the answer is yes, of course, but not only one. And we have 6 months, 1 year in each project to define precisely what is our strategy from a semantic point of view.
And there's another question. Though it is not dedicated to SSH, have you used or tried to integrate with the OpenAir research graph?
It's a really good question. For Lumen, for example, we are not only focused on SSH because, as I mentioned, 3 other communities are already involved, mathematics, Earth system, and molecular dynamics, but we are building a framework designed to welcome other communities after the duration of the project. Of course, this is one of our objectives. And for Graphia, of course, we are more focused on SSH knowledge, but we will plug this knowledge graph with other external knowledge graph in order to be sure that we are interoperable, not only inside the SSH community, but with strong links and bridge with the other one. But to start, our priority is to address SSH community, but with bridge with other graph, especially this one.
In fact, we've already had some initial conversations with OpenAir. We were during a face-to-face meeting we had, it was about something else. We also ended up having a discussion about that. So there's some interest moving forward as the graph becomes a bit more mature. But yeah.
And another question, could you please explain the criteria used to choose the research outputs used for the training?
For the moment, it's difficult to answer because our team are specially dedicated to define these criteria. So that's why this is an ongoing process. So for the moment, we are at the beginning, and I can't answer with precision to this question.
Okay. So any other question?
So there was one about what forms of co-design will be implemented to ensure community involvement. And I do see my colleague Stefano on here, so I don't know if he wants to answer directly or not.
Well, I'm not sure exactly what form means, but we are running interviews at the moment, qualitative interviews to gather user needs, which we will use to define better the features for the projects, because both projects build on GoTriple, so we already have a set of features already. We'll build on those. Then we'll have workshops. They will be from remote. Some of them will be about the human AI interaction, actually, because of course, when you use AI systems, you have to design an interface which allows users to achieve their goals. So some of the workshops will be around that. And then we'll have a user evaluation. So this is more or less what I can say. And again, if anybody wishes to be involved, please email me. We got plenty of things to do. We always need participants, users that can, lend their own experience so we can gather what the community needs.
Okay, so thank you all. Thank you for this presentation. If you have any more questions, and also write them down, we can try to come back to this topic in the end of our workshop. Okay, so let's go to our next presentation. Okay. Just a second. Okay, so our third presentation of the day is from Opera's Innovation Lab. So Innovation Lab Accelerator for AI and LLM-driven innovations. So I would like to call on stage Magda and Tomasz.
Yes, hello everyone. I'll share my screen. I will be presenting. We've prepared a presentation with. Oh my God, sorry. I shared a lot of stuff. Give me a moment. I will do it once more. Second. Yes, I'm there. Okay. Yes, we've prepared the presentation together with Magda, but I will be presenting today. Hello, my name is Tomasz Merle. I'm from the Opera's Innovation Lab and the Digital Humanities Center at IBL PAN, as well as Magda. Yes, so in our presentation, I would like to present first the Opera's Innovation Lab as a kind of a service from Opera's, and then explain how it will be used for AI element-driven solutions developed in the projects that you just heard about. So Graphia and Lumen, and also in the end, how you can contribute to the lab and how the lab can help you with developing your AI element-driven ideas. So those are basically three things that we want to address during the presentation. So the Opera's Innovation Lab is a solution for supporting innovation in SSH. So we are looking for impactful ideas, services, and products from motivated teams in the SSH, and the lab aims to support them in their work. We work through an agile approach, so we work on different stages of the process of innovation. So either it's ideation, prototyping, pilot testing, or scaling. So whatever the stage of development of an idea, we'll have something to offer, and you can collaborate with us. And our focus is on bringing together the Opera's community, the researchers, industry partners, and NGOs. And you can visit our webpage and meet our team and contact us here with these details that are shown now on the screen, and they are clickable in our presentation as well, so you can get to that very easily. So what our accelerator offers is support for different stages of development. So whether you are experienced or just starting with an idea, we are there to support the Opera's community with your needs. We offer hands-on mentorship in the development of your ideas or products and services. whether this is whether you need a resource access or networking and partnerships. We are there for you to help you develop your ideas for innovations in the SSH. But how will the lab support Lumen and Graphia that you've heard a lot from Sai and Julien? So in both projects, the lab will be involved in 3 ways. So we will support pilots that are built into both projects, which are real-world demos that prove feasibility and impact. And I will speak more about this, and also you will learn more about those pilots during the meeting, thanks to other presentations. We'll be involved in co-designing innovative products and features. And finally, the Opera's Innovation Lab will be one of the mechanisms for exploitations of the results of both projects. So at least some of the key exploitable results will be managed in terms of exploitations through the Opera's Innovation Lab. So that is the role of the lab in those projects, and also for AI LLM-driven solutions. So in both projects, there is a number of pilots and use cases that use AI LLM-driven solutions. So those are things like thematic analysis, and this is something that you will learn more about today in the later presentation. So this is one of the examples of what the concrete things are going on in these projects, and the lab will be involved in it in terms of supporting innovation process and then exploitation. But other than that, we also have AI-powered geospatial data extraction, which is an industry-driven solution when we collaborate with one of the beneficiaries, which is in fact a SME and startup. Then we have AI-enhanced archival data classification, or the impact measurement tool based on LLM ideas is also being developed in Graphia. There are other innovative solutions in this project, such as chatbot, which will be developed both in Lumen and partly in Graphia. And also, of course, one of the main products and outcomes of both projects, such as LLM for SSH and SSH Citation Index, are utilizing the power of AI and LLM. So what happens with all those solutions is that they will be, in the end, part of the Opera's Innovation Lab portfolio. Right now, we have two projects there. One is Search Adjust XML Converter, and the other is Impact Measurement Tool, which is one of the pilots that kind of first made its way to the portfolio. But we plan to build this portfolio, and when we are engaged with different pilots and use cases in both projects, they will be managed through this portfolio. And also this is kind of a way to engage with our lab's workings. So we also treat both projects as an occasion to learn about SSH community needs around AI and LLMs. So what can we learn through Opera's new projects and about innovating in SSH with AI and LLMs? So what we want to learn through those projects is what are the key needs for SSH innovators that work with AI and LLMs. The other question is, how do European SSH stakeholders balance striving for new solutions with ethical and legal considerations? This is exactly one of the challenges that we'll be dealing in with Graphia project, with building a legal framework for the use of AI in the project. What does market analysis tell us about SSH solutions and their role for the industry? Because we will, from the get-go, implement the innovation management framework for developing pilots and use cases, we will learn a lot about, okay, how can SSH solutions be used and exploited after the project. So we will be also learning and sharing the results of these processes. And finally, one of the key questions, but also the purposes for doing Graphia and Lumen, is do SSH need to scale up collaboration for larger impact? In fact, in both projects, we are either building collaboration outside of SSH or we are building collaborations with multiple S3s. So it will be an important kind of a result of the project. So does it make a difference that we are joining forces of other S3s? Does it make the solutions based on AI and LLM more worthy of attention and more impactful in the end? So if you would like to, if you are working with AI LLMs and you would like to learn what the lab can do for you, or you would like to share your ideas, we are there for you. So getting in touch with us is in fact very easy. There is a Google form. I will link it in a second in the chat. Just takes a couple of minutes, and we are very passionate about working with motivated teams that have their own ideas. So we are eager to hear from you and hear about your needs, especially when you are working with AI and LLMs. And it doesn't really matter whether you're just starting or you have something that you would like to scale up. There are many opportunities for the Opera's community to collaborate. So with that, I thank you for your attention. And if there are any questions, I'm here for you. And I'm just linking all the forms into the chat. Thank you.
Thank you, Tomasz. Do we have any questions to the Innovation Lab? I don't see anything in the chat, unless I missed it. But I can start. Tomasz, do you think that the SSH need to scale up collaboration for larger impact?
Yes, thank you. So, so that is, I think, the assumption that is behind especially the Graphia project, right? So that's the assumption that both for the data quality and the reuse of the results, scientific results, we need to engage like different stakeholders that are specialized in the areas. This is like, I think that the number one prerequisite for the uptake of solutions by the SSH community, right? So the respected resources needs to be used for training the models and so on. So this is one thing. And we have this, and we have those people on board. We have different S3s involved. But the second dimension of this question is, okay, do we need to join forces to kind of produce results that are interesting and impactful beyond SSH, right? So we know that many stakeholders, like data repositories, for example, are scattered, right? And we need to join them in forms of the kind of also technical organization of knowledge to really make sure that we are utilizing them properly and we are able to provide an impact beyond kind of SSH, right? So this is the assumption that we have. And some of the things that Julian was talking about, that we are doing for example, the technical landscape of the data sources for building SSH knowledge graph is just about that at some point we need kind of a scale to produce interesting results that go beyond SSH, which is also the requirement of the calls that we've got funding from. Yeah, so that would be my answer. Thank you.
Okay. And how could the SSH community actively shape the development of AI tools instead of just to adapt to them?
Yeah, so there is a lot of interest, right, in AI and LLM. It seems like we are, contacted on a daily basis by different people, like fine-tuning the models and being very excited about what they are doing. And of course, And of course, sometimes there are some limitations in terms of the models that are being used. They're being commercial models, for example, right? So, or there are some financial and infrastructural limitations. So I would say that really joining forces together and building interesting cases on trusted data is something that is the shortest route, let's say, for having impactful solutions for SSH rather than really scattered efforts, then in the end rely sometimes on commercial solutions, right? So for us to have solutions that are for SSH, I would say that we need to really come together, and Graphia is all about that. Is bringing the best sources there that they are and the experts and working together to bring the results back that are needed by the actual communities, and that's how we can shape really the development of the tools rather than just focus on what is possible based on some generic solutions. So that's my answer.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
So, no questions from the audience? Okay, so I think we can move on, and if you have any questions, do not hesitate to ask them in the end when we start the open discussion. So now I would like to call again, to call our next presenter, Open Book Publishers Experience with AI. So this will be the fourth presentation, and we started showing what is going on in operas from the special interest groups, from new projects, and from the innovation lab. And now we are going to hear from the community. So what's going on the side of the community regarding AI tools? What are the experiences, the experiments they're doing? So now I'd like to call Rupert.
Thank you so much. Yes, just reiterating, this is going to be sort of a talk, I think, probably with more questions than answers. This is us trying to, at Open Book Publishers, trying to think how, as an academic publisher, we should be engaging with AI and how we're trying to engage and some of the issues that we've had. So there's not many solutions. It's really just some issues and things that we're trying. But let me try and share my slides, which would be a start, I guess. So are those slides coming up there?
Yes, it's not in presentation mode, but now, yes, presentation.
Okay. So just as you know, very, very briefly, we've been trying a little bit with some of the areas to use AI in scholarly publishing process. The talk that I'm talking about today is we've written up as a blog a little while ago. We've got a little blog on our website looking at discussing some of these issues as well. And I also just point out that University of Michigan Press gave a presentation a little while ago where they were looking at very similar issues. So there's another press that's also investigating some of these areas, and that was a very good presentation as well. That's available online if anybody wants to follow up. So what I was going to do today was just give a very brief introduction of Open Book Publishers, then how we are using AI, then some of the legal and ethical considerations that come out from the back of it, and then, of course, the conclusions. So very briefly, Open Book Publishers is a scholar-led non-profit publisher. We founded in 2008, and we've published about 350 titles. We're presently publishing between 50 and 60 titles a year, primarily in the humanities and social sciences, but not exclusively. So we've got science books as well. We've started for the last little while sort of experimenting with AI use. And our approach has been that we definitely should be experimenting with AI use, but to do so carefully and a little bit cautiously to be able to think what we're doing and try and reflect on that. And the conclusion, I guess, of the whole talk is that we're finding AI to be a helpful support, but it is a long way from being able to replace the human expertise that in the whole process. Okay, so AI in our own publishing workflow, examples of places where we're using it, and I'll go into more detail as we go through, is in crafting initial drafts for book blurbs and summaries of books and book chapters, creating alt text for accessibility, assisting with indexing, expanding access to content through AI-generated audiobooks. We're using it in some marketing activities, some automated spell checks and proofreading. And also we have within Open Book Publishers a software development arm, and they've been using it also for coding and some of the development projects. What we're presently not doing that though is using it in copy editing. We haven't found a good AI alternative to standard copy editing tasks. Okay, so running through those quickly, what we have been doing with the blurbs for books and sometimes for some chapter abstracts is using ChatGPT to generate some summary from some of the key information, such as book proposals and introductions, or putting the whole chapter in and asking for an abstract. But in all cases, that has been an initial draft, which then human editors have looked at, and then we've sent it back to authors to review. And so it's been a very useful initial spot for drafting and saving several hours of work in that sort of summarizing area for each book or chapter. We do typically ask authors to create chapter abstracts rather than us doing it. And I think some of them have been using ChatGPT to be helping them with that as well. We've also been using it to help us identify primary indexing topics and lists to assist with indexing, and also for generating keyword suggestions for metadata. Again, in all cases, it's been a good draft spot. They've been good at identifying initial places, but they all have needed human oversight and to refine the AI-generated suggestions as well. We've got to be a little careful about what we're asking for. What they've been completely hopeless at, well, we're pretty hopeless at actually, is generating the actual subject codes like thema or BIC codes, which you'd think would be something that they could map across quite easily, but actually they've been pretty poor at doing that, is our experience. Just to I'll come back to some of the refining of the AI suggestions. There are quite a few biases that especially something like ChatGPT. There's biases to Northern literature and biases to topics and things like that are identified. So one has to be a little bit careful about what questions one's asking and how one's prompting the AI to get good lists in some of these cases. We've also been using AI to generate the alt text and to enhance the accessibility of titles. Now, quite a few, maybe I didn't say, we're a completely open access publisher. Accessibility is clearly a critically important part of being open access, but it is a bit that's sometimes understated. And so enhancing accessibility of open access content, I think, is quite a big issue beyond just OBP. And so we've been using, again, ChatGPT to generate the initial draft of alt text for images and for tables and for figures. And again, they go back for human review, both by the editors and going back to the authors as well to ensure that they've been accurately done. And we're also using some of the automated accessibility checkers for EPUBs and PDF files, such as Ace by Daisy, and the Adobe InDesign Acrobat has got accessibility checkers. There's a bunch of other open access ones for those as well. And again, they have been useful in helping to identify issues, but not always particular. You wouldn't want to rely on them. For instance, you can get a nice tick for Ace by Daisy for alt text if you've added the word image as alt text to every single image in the item. Then that'll be recorded as a successful alt text and insertion. Of course, it's a completely meaningless bit of alt text to have put in there. So there's still some work to be done along those lines. We've also been using AI to generate audiobooks for our works, and this has been an experiment where we took a subset of EPUBs and used AI to generate audiobooks. We experimented with a couple. Google Play has got a free one, well, it's presently free anyway, which will generate audiobook from the EPUB, and then there's some commercial or non-free ones such as 11 Labs that we also tried. The 11 Labs results were better. They've got probably a better user experience, but they also are quite costly to implement and over 100 to 200 pounds per title, which it wasn't clear to us that the improvement at this stage, while we're experimenting, was worth that extra value. And so we've presently got these up and available both on our website and on Google Play, and we're looking for feedback and to see what people think and to get about how much they're being used. Again, human oversight required in these as well. So they're very good at getting things up and running, but then you need to go through and edit them and make sure the quality is okay. And there's a bit of human work that goes into those as well. And to date, the ones that we've got up on Google Books have been downloaded about as much as the free EPUBs. So there is some uptake. But it's early days really to see where that's going. We're also using it for marketing in various places, creating drafts for texts that are targeted at different audiences. And so easing and helping us target our marketing campaigns for books more directly. And it's been helpful again in creating drafts, but all of them need editing. And also in looking and compiling lists of journals and societies for marketing purposes that we might want to reach out to with a book and advise them. So that sort of searching and compiling lists again has been quite good, but again you need some careful prompting because you end up prioritizing Anglo-American journals if one just sort of takes it as the default outcome. And then finally, our software development team have also been using it as part of their operating practices, generating code explanation, generating snippets of code that are useful for inserting into bigger programs, and automating some of the test writing. So these are some of the areas that our software team have been using AI as well. Again, primarily ChatGPT, but also Copilot. Okay. We've also been asking our authors, we've been thinking about how authors and reviewers are using AI. And there's two areas that they could be doing it. One is the underlying research itself, and we've heard some of the tools that might be coming along to help with that, but also in the preparation and the writing of the manuscript or the report. And here it's a much more difficult, and maybe we can talk about this more, exactly how authors are using it, what is good or bad in this use setting. There's no clear agreements within the disciplines about what accepted practice is or acceptable boundaries are. We've been asking our authors for the last 6 months about how they have been using AI just as a question, nothing moral, nothing, no, we're not going to not publish you because of something else you said. And 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 some of the primarily the answers that we've had back is that they've been using it for translations and for grammatical checks and corrections, especially for non-native English speaking authors that have been using it for in that grammar and translations. Of course, this is self-reporting, and I know that people might be a bit reluctant to say, well, actually, I used it more broadly than that, or in other settings. But there's also the sort of the overlap, and maybe come back to that in a second about the sort of these two uses of underlying research, using it for underlying research and using it for writing. These boundaries are quite tricky. If it's been used in underlying research, but then you've written it without AI, is that acceptable? Or if you've done the underlying research, but you've used AI to summarize your research, is that acceptable? Or if you've done both, is that acceptable? So these different uses of it overlap in different ways, and it's still very tricky to be able to make judgments about what is good or bad and what's acceptable or not. And I think we're a long way from having norms to be able to judge those. And so comes back to, therefore, what should we be doing in assessing and recognizing AI in the manuscripts that we receive? We are aware, well, I'm going to call them book mills instead of paper mills, but we've got publishers out there I'm aware of who just take OA content, change the author's name, change the title, and just reproduce it. And you might be able to say, well, there's some sort of plagiarism reuse or something, but all they need to do now is throw it through GPT and rephrase the whole thing, and they can generate books rapidly. And so we've had, in another setting, I'm involved in the tote open metadata. We've had publishers come to say, would we disseminate their content? Some of these publishers have got like 50 or 60 titles, all written by the same person across various different disciplines. And it's quite remarkably diverse person that's able to do that, especially as they're all being published in a 2-year period. And so you just think, okay, what are we doing here and how are we going to assess that? It's a real problem for us now going forward about how to engage and work through how AI is being used in these sort of paper mills. And we come back to these complications between human versus AI generated research, human versus AI write-up of the research, and then the overlaps between those. So there's multiple combinations there that are difficult to really get our heads around. Very quickly, some legal issues. Copyright. The copyright is clearly the big one, which is going through the various law courts at present, and I think we're going to have to wait and see where it is. But it would seem like fair use and text and data mining are the sort of the copyright exemptions that could well be applied for the use of large language models. And we'll just have to wait and see where that goes through. But the outcomes could well differ between whether they're used to train an LLM model or whether they're used to paraphrase or summarize the content of a particular article. And that's going to be a difficult thing because it's something to do with the question that's asked rather than or what's been generated in the question rather than the process. And so it's going to be tricky. And I guess we could also expect the legal decisions to be different across different jurisdictions. So I think that there's going to be complications coming up for that. I just put in a note that I was quite interested to see that ChatGPT was getting upset with DeepSeek because DeepSeek might have been trained on ChatGPT outputs, and of course ChatGPT has just taken lots of copyright material without question in their own training. So there's going to be a bunch of arguments here about what is or isn't allowed in the copyright world. A few early rulings suggest that the AI-generated works will not be copyrightable. There seems to be, at least the early calls have been that copyright is designed to protect human activity, and there would need to be significant evidence of significant human activity in their output to put copyright on the AI works. CC licenses, the Creative Commons organization seems to be taking a similar sit and wait and see what happens approach, but probably feeling that fair dealing and data mining is probably going to win the day as far as training is concerned. And I just raised some of the issues. Attribution is clearly a problem in these large language model, and something that we've heard about today as well is how do you get attribution involved sensibly. The NC license is likely to have some bite, but the ND license, again, it comes back to what is a derivative work, and what's original, what's derivative is going to be a difficult one to assess. As far as contracts are concerned, two of the distributors, Lightning Source, our print of demand, will not take AI-generated content at present, so they would not distribute or take that. And similarly, Spotify for audiobooks, we can't distribute the audiobooks that we've generated by AI via Spotify because they won't take them. So there's going to be contracting issues involved around AI. We also see that many of the large language models are contracting with some of the largest publishers to use their contract, to have access to their content for training. I'm not aware of that happening with any OA publisher yet, but it comes back to the points that we've just heard, that the material that these are being trained on is going to be important, and we need to think about how that and the contractual agreements that those are involved. How are we going for time? Ethical considerations. We've been playing with the humans versus machine ethics. Are we just replacing human expertise with machines? And presently, we don't feel that that's the case. AI has been improving workflows and the work experience for existing employees, but it hasn't meant that there's any reduction in employees that we need to involve. It's just that we've been able to make life a little easier for them. And as far as audiobooks are concerned, we're creating new content. We would never be able to afford a human voice actor to be able to create the audiobooks for us without AI generation. So this is a new way of disseminating content. Business practices, we're concerned about the ethical nature of the models, the general models that are out there. Comes back to some of the talks that we've been hearing before about how are these being trained, what are their employment practices. We've seen complaints about ChatGPT employment practices in Kenya. We've got DeepSeek is open source, ChatGPT isn't. DeepSeek is Chinese owned, ChatGPT is US owned. Dare I say it now, I don't know which is best. And government, clearly government and company training censorships and biases are important, and some of the environmental issues as well. It's difficult to assess sometimes, and it's changing rapidly, as we've seen with DeepSeek. And in some cases, something like providing an audiobook, there's going to be quite a lot of resources in generating that, but is that better than having the browsers doing it individually whenever they access it? Okay, so that's it. Really, conclusions. That's where we are. We're asking questions. We'd love input about what we're doing right or wrong, or what anybody thought about it. There's lots of issues. They're changing a lot. We're just trying to take it step by step, consult with employees and authors as we go along, and consult with the community. It comes back to the original conclusion. They're useful. We find them useful. They're saving us some time. They're improving workflows, but they require human expertise and a lot of care and moderation in their application. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Rupert. Do we have any questions? So, Antonio, would you like to ask your question?
Yes, I could directly. But first, thank you very much, Rupert, because it's crystal clear and it's very pragmatic. I was wondering, to address the confidentiality and security concerns, the fact that many of the mainstream models are owned and hosted in foreign countries. Did you consider trying open source models, maybe self-hosted or on a third-party infrastructure?
No, I mean, did we consider? So we've taken a fairly we took the sort of the most obvious ones that were out there. The ChatGPT, was generating interesting results, and so really, because this is an experimentation rather than a full implementation, we're saying, okay, let's go with ChatGPT. We did a little bit of a play with a couple of others that didn't seem to be doing anything much better than ChatGPT, to be honest. And so, yeah, we were looking at the outputs, and then just raising these types of concerns now going forward, that if we were to really implement it, go in wholeheartedly, we'd really be wanting to think about those other things and make sure that, what are the outputs that are coming out when it's beginning to get better ones that are beginning to do better attribution along the way. So there's better models that are coming along, and we'd be looking, to investigate those. But at present, let's take the big one, let's take the easy one. We'll sign up to ChatGPT Pro and play with it and see where it leads us.
Okay, thank you.
So there's another question. So you've explored the drafts for marketing purposes. Have you also looked into plain language summaries aimed not specifically at marketing, but rather at making content accessible to the general public?
So that's a good question. And so what does it mean to make content generally accessible to the general public? We've got books that are open access. They are there. If we wanted to generate completely different outputs from that, then what does that mean? To make it discoverable is one thing, and that's where using metadata, we're doing lots of things to try and make the work more discoverable. To make the work more engaged by the new AI tools, that's something that we'd love to think about. What are the new outputs that a publisher should be doing to be able to generate full engagement with lots of the tools that are being used by the general public? That would, I think, a really interesting question. It also goes back to engaging back between the published work and maybe some of the data that's gone into that. How should they be integrated in a way that enhances discoverability and use by tools that the general public are using? Generating a sort of an extended blurb on our website, it's about where do we send that? Does that really engage more people? It means, how are people engaging with our works? Presently, they're finding them on Google and coming through. So it's a really good question, but it's about where do you want to put those? How do they fit into the output? And I don't think that's probably I'm not sure I've answered that question. It's a complicated question because discovery is coming through from all sorts of different places.
And I'll ask this. There are two questions for you, Rupert. I'll ask them, and then we'll go to the next speaker. And if you want, continue. People who are asking the questions. If you want more clarification, if you want to develop further, we'll continue that during the discussion. So, two questions for you, Rupert. One. You use AI only for English content generation or tried also with other languages? If so, were the results as good? And second question, you mentioned mostly ChatGPT. Did you try other AI tools? Is Claude AI somehow better from ethical point of view?
So I think the second one I've sort of answered. We didn't go running around on ethical viewpoints. We had a play with a couple of the general AI tools that are around, but really we haven't we haven't optimized for AI tool. And as far as the AI for English content generation, so quite a few people are using AI for translation, and both into and out of English. And so that is one of the ways that many authors are using that. most of our content that we are doing is in English. However, we have used it a couple of times in generating alt text in foreign languages, and again, it seemed to be pretty good. It went back sort of without comment. So limited non-English use, to be honest. But it's been on the translation work into and out of English has been the best use, and it's been fairly good as the feedback that we had so far.
Okay, thank you. So now let's go to our last speaker before the discussion is Stefano De Paoli. Are you ready to take the
Yes,
floor?
actually, it's not just me. There is also my colleague Alex. So we'll split this last session. So yeah, I mean, myself and Alex, we are social scientists, more or less, I'd say. So we got in the habit, I think, when we do research and we think that something could be done with AI, we try to do it actually with AI. It doesn't mean we are going to replace what we do regularly, but at least checking if we can try to reproduce what we do, give us, space for exploring, and it helps us trying to stay a little bit on top of how things are. So we are going to show you a couple of low-key activities that we do as part of our research. So let me share my screen. I think you can see it now. All right. So what hasn't been mentioned so far, actually, is that we also got another project through Operas, which is called FASCA. It's much smaller than Graphia and Lumen. And one of the things that we are trying to do there is to bring a Jupyter hub on top of the platform GoTriple to allow people to use AI systems and other data science solutions using the GoTriple material as data. Now, what you see here is a Jupyter hub. It's not the one on GoTriple. This is on top of a computer we have at our university where there are a couple of GPUs. And through there, I can use open source models, which is similar to what Antoine was mentioning, right? So using your own open source models. Now, let's imagine, which often happens to me, that I want to get a quick overview of literature on a topic, right? I could spend a couple of months doing it, or I could try to do it with AI in maybe a couple of hours. So here I got a bunch of papers, right, which I could have grabbed, for example, using the GoTriple API, right? And I want to get a quick overview of the papers. Now I can get AI to do it for me. Now the way I do it is first I ask the AI model to summarize an 8,000 papers to a shorter text, say 1,000, 1,500 words. And then I ask it to classify. And to use an open source model, right, at least for me, I settle now to use a library which is called Olama, right? It's an open source project which has got several open source models. And I found it very easy to use. It's literally 5 lines of Python code. So you import the library, right? You call the client, you declare your endpoint. And here is where I call the model. Now I'm using DeepSeek, which was mentioned earlier, right? This all Chinese, not Chinese, United States thing. Now this is open source. I can bring it in my infrastructure, right? And when I push data onto it, it's not training on it, right? It's just using the data to respond to my prompt, right? Now here I get to extract the PDF and transform it into text, plain text, right? Then here I've got my prompt. I ask it to generate a summary, right? I give more detailed instruction of what I want, 400 words on the main contribution, 400 words on the findings, something about the methods, and so on and so forth. Now, once I run this stuff here through the Jupyter notebook, we'll start grinding and produce it. Right now, let's not wait for it. I'll show you how it is. Now, this is the output. the summaries of all the 30 papers. Now, because I'm using DeepSeek, this is a model that thinks. So as a response, you also get the thinking that it does, right? So it's here, it's thinking, right? And then that's the summary, right, of the paper. Now with this, say in 15 minutes, I get a summary. Now I get the summary is not perfect. Maybe it's not something you can publish on a website as a summary of a book. It might require human oversight, but for doing a quick overview of the literature is fine for me, right? Now, once I got all these summaries, right, I can try to classify them. And I've got another script. It is exactly the same. To run an open source model is 5 lines of code. Now here I use Mistral. It's another open source model, and I've got other models down here, right? So when I run this, I've got a prompt down here, right? And I give it 2 definitions. Now the literature is about social innovation. And in the social innovation, there is this tendency of finding technocratic literature that pushes social innovation onto market and these kind of things, or there is the grassroots social innovation. Now I give it 2 definitions in the prompt, and I ask it to classify my summaries based on those definitions, pretty much, right? So I'll show you the output. Pretty much the script puts in each summary one at a time. The AI, Mistral in this case, does the classification, and it tells me if that summary is technocratic, democratic, and so on. Okay? So that's a classification process of literature done with a couple of scripts, and literally to call an AI system. I mean, this is 5 lines of code, and I mean, I'm self-taught coding. I'm not a programmer. This doesn't require a lot. And of course, there is always the question, how do we know this is good? The thing is, we don't know, right? But we can try to find workarounds. So I've been working on this idea of consensus voting. So I use several AI models with the same set of summaries, the same prompt, and I see how they classify the same, right? So if they all give me the same classification, then I can assume that that is the right classification, right? Sometimes the model tells me, I think it's neither technocratic or democratic, right? Then you assume that probably the paper covers both areas, right? Sometimes it struggles. Now here there is a case in which 3 models told me that a summary is democratic and 2 others told me it's democratic, then it means that no consensus was reached pretty much, right? It might be indeed that the paper expands on both, market-driven solution for social innovation and also on the grassroots, right? And the summary, right, maybe wasn't clear about the direction, and the models give different definitions. And this is one way that I found to try to navigate around these problems. Now, because Carl asked me to be quick, I'll just show you one thing. I'll skip talking about the thematic analysis stuff. How do we deal with this stuff into papers? Now, because I'm using AI as part of the method of the research, right? I mean, I don't think there is any shame in declaring into the method section of your papers that you did use it and how you did it and what prompts you used and everything, right? So if you tell the methods underpinning the research in this case, I mean, I think that's all we can do, right? That should allow ideally people to reproduce this classification procedure, and it is not that the content of the paper was necessarily generated by the AI. Of course, I did write these parts, but the classification down was done by the AI. I simply tell it, right? I declare it. Okay, so I'll skip talking about the thematic analysis bit because we are running out of time. Carla, is that okay?
You have some time yet.
But there is Alex that needs to present as well. He needs 10 minutes.
Oh, okay.
I'm fine to let Alex present
I can do the
another thing we are working on.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Can you hear me, first of all? Is that coming through okay?
Yes.
Okay, I'll just share my screen. Hello, folks, and thanks to everybody for coming along. Appreciate it, Oculus, for putting on this session. So, where Spano was showing you the Jupyter notebook, is my screen sharing now? Okay.
Yes.
Yes, it should be just on my browser. I'm going to share, so not everybody's going to be comfortable necessarily jumping in and using something like a Jupyter notebook or writing their own code. So it's just to share an open source tool that's already existing out there that can help facilitate some of the sort of AI enhanced literature review, literature searching and summarization tasks that I guess are probably critical for most social science researchers and humanities researchers. So, and somebody else was asking earlier on as well about how can we get involved as SSH researchers? How can we get involved? And this is the kind of route that you can by contributing to projects like this, opening up issues, requesting enhancements. I think this is a really critical time for that collaboration between open science and open source. And I think together we can drive some really innovative products. So this is an example of a product or a tool that I haven't designed or contributed to it, but it's open source, it's out there and anybody can use it, and it's called Cotemon. For those of you that are familiar with ChatGPT, you'll probably think that it's quite a similar setup. The key feature here is that you're using your own literature. So rather than risking those hallucinations that are so so apparent in ChatGPT or Claude or some of the closed source ones, this one really allows you to drill down into the sources and find out where has it extracted that knowledge from, and what sources it come from, and it allows you to actually gives that transparency and lets you look at the different sources. So I've got this running locally, and I'll share a link over to the actual GitHub page. I'm aware of the time, so I'm going to fly through this quite quickly. You install the app. It's a really straightforward Docker install for those of you who've used Docker before. If not, there's command line instructions as well. It's fairly straightforward if you've got a little bit of coding knowledge. From there, you can actually set your settings for how it reasons and responds to your request. So whereas you ask ChatGPT and you might give it a bit of a, can you give me a detailed response or can you break it down into subqueries? You can actually set those, hard code them in here to this tool. So for example, I can ask it to do a simple query, which is where it's just going and searching for the information that I've requested and bringing it back. Or I can get it to do a complex query. And this is where it self-reflects. It asks itself, what questions do I need to ask myself, and what information do I need to find to answer this in a more advanced way. You can also determine, or you can also set which models you're using here. So this is open source and closed. So if you've got an OpenAI key and you don't want to faff around with the llama, even though it is really, really straightforward and simple, you can simply plug in your API key here and ask it, and it'll use it the OpenAI or ChatGPT models. Alternatively, you can use something like a llama. So if there's any concerns around, let's say, data privacy, you're uploading something that has got, let's say it's not anonymized, you'd obviously want to be using a local model, a model that you've pulled, and that is just, there's no information getting sent away to the cloud, it's all happening locally on your machine. Once you're all set up, you can then start adding your files. One of the beautiful things about this tool is that multimodality. So depending on the model that you've set in your resources, you can have images in here. It can even take, certain models can take audio. And yeah, you can put in links, PDFs, text documents, and whatever you fancy. As you can see here, we've been using this in a project where we're looking at the gaming sector in Dundee relative to the gaming sectors across other European clusters. So we've got hundreds of links, hundreds of PDFs, hundreds of documents as well. And now when I go to my chat interface, this is what folks will recognize this as being fairly similar to your ChatGPTs, but I can ask a query in here. And rather than it going away and bringing me literature that I have no idea where it came from, it's going to search the evidence base that I provided and provide the information based on that. So let's say, I've done a copy paste job for that one. And you can see here at the bottom that I've got mind map set to on, and I find that to be quite a, let's find out if it's actually going to work now. It's running locally on my machine in the other room, so let's see. So on the right-hand panel, you can see that it started to give the sources, and it starts producing its answer in the middle, but it relates them to sources as well. And I think this is the real thing that sets this apart from your kind of closed source tools like your ChatGPTs at the moment. So it's given me where my query is and all the documents around it that it's retrieved to show the relative distance. If I move further down, this is where it gets a bit more interesting. And if I run over time here, let me know. It produces a mind map. So I know you probably can't see that very well. I'll send it over into the chat. And one of the really interesting things that it does, what I find quite useful when I'm, let's say, summarizing a general area that I'm not well versed in, is it gives these relevance scores as well. So down here on the right-hand side, you can see that it's not only provided where it got the information from, as in which document, it's also said what's the relevance of this text to the user's query. So this allows me to get really precise and really definitive answers to quite like precise questions rather than vague and it giving me kind of, oh, this is a general answer. I can look into the source and say, is that what they've said? And also get those really specific answers to queries. Similarly to your sort of your ChatGPTs and stuff, it'll save this conversation. What we're using at the moment is basic RAG, so that's retrieval augmented generation, where it's going and just kind of quite a basic search of literature that I provided. But a tool like this also offers things like graph RAG, so you can have those knowledge graphs constructed for even more in-depth and accurate responses and queries. This is just one of literally hundreds of open source tools that are out there right now. So one of the things I would really encourage is if people are thinking about how can we as social sciences and humanities researchers make our impact on this kind of critical phase of development that we're seeing in AI, is go and contribute to these projects. Go on and ask for an enhancement, say, I'm a researcher and this tool would be really handy for me. And you'd be probably pleasantly surprised at how many nerdy tech devs there are out there that are just waiting for somebody to come along and request a functionality. I'm aware that time's going, so I'll wrap up there. If